I don't know what to say, really. 3 minutes till the biggest battle of our professional lives. All comes down to today. Either we heal as a team, or we're gonna crumble. Inch by inch, play by play, till we're finished. You know, when you get old in life, things get taken from you. I mean, that's part of life. But you only learn that when you start losing stuff. You find out life's this game of inches. So is football. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. I mean, 1/2 a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us. They're in every break of the game, every minute, every second. On this team, we fight for that inch. On this team, we tear ourselves and everyone else around us to pieces for that inch. We claw with our fingernails for that inch. Because we know when we add up all those inches, that's gonna make the difference between winning and losing. Between living and dying. I'll tell you this, in any fight, it's the guy who's willing to die who's gonna win that inch. And I know if I'm gonna have any life anymore, it's because I'm still willing to fight and die for that inch. Because that's what living is. The 6 inches in front of your face. That's football, guys. That's all it is. Now, what are you gonna do?
Are you ready for some football? Okay, maybe not everyone, but I hope even those of you who aren't normally turned on by a sports movie from the 90s can feel a little something of the passion in that moment. There's no mistaking it. This moment is all about passion and emotion. There's anxiety, doubt, regret, vulnerability, and as the tension builds, the shift to desire, motivation, trust, and above all, hope. This is the turning point of the season and the movie, not because of the content of the speech, but because of the passion, the confidence, the hope that it inspires. I think that's exactly the kind of speech that Jesus gives to his followers in Mark chapter 13. The content is vastly different. They are headed towards Jesus' arrest and crucifixion, not a football game. But the purpose, the spirit, is the same. Yes, the content of Jesus' speech is quite disturbing. Apocalypse, false teachers, wars, the clash of empires, earthquakes and famines. We only read the introduction. Jesus goes on to describe arrests, torture, fake trials, families turning on each other, women and children running for the hills, fleeing for their lives. The sun and moon going dark, the stars falling from the skies, the very heavens being shaken. That's the content. It's a horrible vision of the future, a worst-case scenario for the days to come. The content is apocalypse, the coming end of the world. But the message is quite different. It's quite the opposite, actually. In context, we can see that Jesus is not talking about the future, and he says quite directly that this is not the end. As we've learned throughout this series, the Gospel of Mark was initially written to a group of Jewish Christ followers in Rome around the year 65 in the first century. The city of Rome had just burned to the ground, and this group of Jewish Christians were blamed for it. And so many of them were arrested, found guilty by fake trials. They were tortured, they were executed, they were forced to turn in their family members, forced to run or hide for their lives. This worst-case scenario of Jesus' speech, apocalypse, that's not the future for Mark's readers in Rome. It is their immediate past. It's their hellish present. And though the Roman Christ followers were an extreme case, really, that was life for most people in the Roman Empire. For much of humanity, actually, human history, most of humanity has lived with that kind of uncertainty. Disasters, famines, wars, it's all beyond our understanding, beyond our control. You know that feeling we've all been waking up to in this pandemic, the existential uncertainty of tomorrow. That's been the inescapable reality for most of human existence. That really changes the way we read the text, I hope. The speech is presented as a warning, but the Christ followers in Rome didn't need a warning. The disasters were inevitable. The worst was already happening to them. A warning would have been far too little, far too late. Instead, what Jesus is offering is a way forward through the trouble, an expression of hope in the middle of the storm. How exactly is this dark speech about carnage and catastrophe a message of hope? To get there, we need to take a step back, giant step back, all the way to a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Some of you probably know that a lot of George Lucas's ideas for the story of Star Wars were based on the work of a professor named Joseph Campbell, especially Campbell's work on mythology, archetypes, and the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell studied the great myths, the ancient stories of a whole bunch of different cultures, and he was looking for what they had in common, a shared window into the human experience. And he came to the conclusion that underneath all of those stories, there was an archetype, a single pattern that they all followed to some degree. At the deepest level, Campbell found that all the stories are the same story. There's one hero with 1,000 faces, as Campbell put it. And that one story he called the hero's journey. Essentially, he came to see that one story as the story of us all, how we move through life from childhood to maturity as we follow this path. Basically, there are 4 movements. First, the call to adventure. The ordinary life of the hero is interrupted by a glimpse of something larger, a whole new world. And usually this is brought by a teacher or mentor who offers to guide the hero if they're willing to step off of their ordinary path into the unknown. So Luke Skywalker hears a mysterious message from a princess and meets an old Jedi, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Harry Potter receives a letter inviting him to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Aaron Brockovich accidentally stumbles into a new job with a lawyer who actually cares about people. Anna falls in love and discovers her sister Elsa's hidden power, and in the process, she makes the whole kingdom frozen. Then, in stage 2, the journey gets hard, really hard. The hero learns new skills and discovers strength that they didn't know that they had, but they also face challenges that they cannot overcome. The Empire strikes back, and Luke fails as a Jedi. Harry Potter learns the awful truth about Voldemort and his parents. Aaron Brockovich gets crushed, buried in paperwork by the big law firms. Anna is rejected by Elsa. Her sister stabs her in the heart. The second stage culminates with the abyss, the ultimate challenge, impossible challenge, often death. But then the story turns, and the third stage reveals that failure and even death have transformed the hero, and they earn the reward that drew them into the unknown in the first place. Luke Skywalker completes his training and discovers the family that he always longed for. Harry Potter defeats evil with the stronger magic of courage and friendship. Erin Brockovich proves to everyone, especially herself, that she is smart enough and tough enough to protect the people that she cares about. Anna and Elsa discover the strength of sisterhood and unfreeze the kingdom with their love. And then, victorious, the hero receives the gifts of their victory and returns home to the normal world, forever changed, and perhaps ready to take on the next challenge because sequels is where the money is at. Luke redeems his father and brings balance to the Force. Harry Potter goes back to Privet Drive knowing that he is not alone. He has all the power that he'll ever need. Erin Brockovich wins financial stability for her family and the self-confidence to lead the next round of lawsuits against the corporate giants. Elsa and Anna, together at last, share their castle and the gifts of their power and love with the whole kingdom. That's the hero's journey, and you can find it in novels and pretty much any Hollywood blockbuster. And Joseph Campbell's idea is that this pattern has been around long before anyone pointed it out. There's something in the human experience that keeps coming back to this story of longing and failure and rebirth and return. Now, it happens that one person who studied under Campbell is Alexander Shaya, whose book Heart and Mind I've been using for this series on the Gospels. Shaya is from a Lebanese Christian tradition called Mennonite Catholicism, and he learned to read the Gospels in a different order from most of Western Christianity. Instead of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Shaya's tradition orders the Gospels Matthew, Mark, John, and Luke, together with the second half of Luke's writings, the book of Acts. The historical reasons for this difference in order are not all that clear and really quite boring, so I won't get into them today. Also, Shaya's tradition reads the Gospels in that order back to back, sequentially, beginning to end. So while Western preachers like me tend to pick and choose from the various Gospels or even try to arrange them in chronological order, Shaya learned to see them as one larger story with 4 different chapters, repetitions in the telling of a single story. So when Shaya was learning about the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell, he saw 4 stages in the hero's journey and made that connection with the 4 Gospels. And after a lifetime of learning and writing, Shaya has pulled together those connections in what he calls quadratos. 4 paths, 1 journey. Find hope, meaning, and a common life together through the universal journey of transformation. Basically, quadratos lines up the Gospels with the hero's journey. In Matthew, the emphasis is on the call. To Jesus' followers in the story and to the audience for whom the Gospel is written, there's an invitation to a whole new world, the realm of heaven. It won't be easy, this climb up the mountain of God, but this is where true life is found, and you will never be alone. Will you come and follow me? Then, as we've seen, the Gospel of Mark is where things go dark. There are storms and trials, new skills and power, yes, but also growing pains and so much suffering. The disciples in Mark never really figure it out. Next week, we'll talk about the end of Mark, the last chapter, which ends not with resurrection, but with fear and confusion. Then next in John, the gospel story is quite different. Jesus is revealed as the I Am, the treasure that has been hidden in plain sight from the very beginning. Those who follow the path are surprised by the joy of the journey, the rewards and fulfillments that come even before the end of the journey. And then finally, the Gospel of Luke Acts, where the emphasis is on serving and living out the reign of God. You have been changed by this journey with Jesus. You have received the gift of the Spirit. Now what will you do with it? Quadratos points out that each gospel, each chapter serves the larger story with a different emphasis. Different chapters for different seasons, different stages of the journey. Quadratus is a very unique approach to the Gospels, and I haven't seen it anywhere else and find it quite inspiring. Whether this hero's journey metaphor was what the original writers intended or not, the pattern is there. And if we choose to see it, I think it can be quite powerful. I bring this up today because I think that understanding the hero's journey brings out the message of hope that runs underneath what otherwise might feel like a terrifying apocalyptic speech in Mark 13. On the hero's journey, Jesus' speech falls right at the bottom, approaching the darkest hour. Jesus is about to lead his disciples into the crucible, the center of the storm in Jerusalem. He's going to confront his enemies. They're going to crush him. The disciples know it too. They don't want to believe it, but they can feel it coming. Likewise, Mark's audience in Rome is at the bottom of their path, in the middle of their own fires of pain and death. They're actually through the worst of it. Soon Emperor Nero will be killed, and the empire will turn its attention to other problems and other scapegoats. But they don't know that yet. They're just trying to survive. And in those times, it's tempting to give up on the journey. Many of us look for shortcuts, ways to skip the hard parts and still get the rewards, like jumping from Palm Sunday straight to Easter. Or we might try to turn around, to go back to the familiar, comfortable, normal life that we used to know. Or we just might check out entirely. Hey, I'm no hero. I don't want any treasure. I mean, life is not perfect here in stage 2, but I would rather stay here and cope with this pain than risk things getting even worse in the next stage. To those temptations, Jesus says, I know how bad things seem. Your worst fears may be right. You will be lied to, beaten up, driven out, lost and abandoned. I see all of those things and worse for you. But this is not the end. This is only the beginning of the labor pains. That metaphor of labor and new birth is so accurate. The way ahead is painful, but stay with it. You can do this. We can do this together. Jesus is the doula of the hero's journey. Yes, it hurts mama, but think about the baby that's on its way. This is how new life comes into being. This is where the story turns. But you have to stay with me. You have to stay present. You have to go through it. You have to push. More academically, as Alexander Shaya puts it, this is how change works. This is how strong foundations are built. There are always extreme struggles as the old beliefs, the old patterns, the former ways of being fight back and then crumble to make room for the new ones arising. That is Jesus' message. This suffering that you're going through, past, present, and future, it's not random. It has a meaning. It has a purpose. It contains within it a path, an invitation, an opportunity for transformation and rebirth. This is painful and frightening, absolutely, but it could be the turning point of the whole journey. You can't see it now, but the world is about to turn. How's that for a message of hope? In Alexander Shaya's study of this section of Mark, he quotes former Czech revolutionary and President Václav Havel. Hope is an ability to work for something because it is good, not just because it stands a chance to succeed. It is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense, regardless of how it turns out. Hope is not the conviction that something will turn out well. That's the harsh truth of the hero's journey. It is not without casualties. Jesus died days after this speech, and even though his followers witnessed the resurrection, he was gone. He was no longer with them. Likewise, the church leaders, those killed by the Romans, they weren't coming back. The death and loss at the bottom of the hero's journey is real. Anna is betrayed by her fiancé, and Elsa's ice palace is destroyed. Erin Brockovich is rejected by her boyfriend. Her kids are definitely going to need a ton of therapy. Harry Potter loses some of his friends. My kids haven't read all the books yet, so I'm not going to say which ones. Obi-Wan dies. Yoda dies. Luke's father dies. And spoilers, you too are going to die before you make it to the end of your journey. Do things turn out well if everything and everyone we love eventually goes away? Life, even the life of faith, is filled with uncertainty, inevitability. But hope is not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense, regardless of how it turns out. If something makes sense, if an experience has meaning, hope is there. And who gets to decide if a thing has meaning or not? I do. I mean, not me personally, the pulpit of meaning. But we do. That's one of the basic anthropological definitions of humanity. We are animals that make meaning. Legitimately, we get to decide if an experience has meaning to us or not. We can be sure that the suffering, the worst case scenario, has meaning because we can choose to put it there. Not in a trite, everything happens for a reason kind of way, though that does work for some people apparently, but in the deepest way, creating meaning through compassion and sacrifice, through relationships and connections, simply by refusing to let go of the light. That's the choice that Jesus is pointing to with his call to stay awake, to pay attention even in this darkest hour. He's giving an invitation to look for and create meaning and purpose in spite of unknown outcomes. That's the transformation at the bottom of the hero's journey, to redeem even the pain by giving it a place in the story, claiming it as our own. It's the path forward. Like I said, I think that's present in the gospel story, whether you buy the Quadrados perspective or not. In the very next chapter of the story of Mark, we find the Last Supper, the First Communion. Jesus gathers with his friends in the upper room, and he does exactly this thing that I've been describing. They're having a meal, Passover dinner. It's supposed to be a celebration of God's faithfulness, the great rescue of Exodus. But Jesus doesn't celebrate. He goes dark. I'm going to die, he says. This bread, this is like my body. It will be broken, torn apart. Take this cup, the grapes that have been crushed to make this wine, that's about to happen to me. This is my blood about to be spilled and poured out. That's my path. That's where this journey leads, to my death. And Jesus doesn't say it out loud, but it's just as apparent. This will be your deaths also if you continue to follow. That's dark, turning a holiday meal into an object lesson on death. And yet, we repeat this memory, we remember this story because it is a moment filled with meaning. It's full of life. We have experienced this in the communion ritual, not because we know that everything will turn out in the end. We're not there yet. We can't know for sure. But we can know that whatever comes, even pain, even death, has meaning and purpose because we can choose to put it there. And that's what Jesus does. This is my body broken, not for nothing, broken for you. This is my blood poured out, not for nothing, poured out for forgiveness. There is hope, even in death, for we can choose to put it there. That is our choice on this journey. We don't know what comes next, but we can choose to fill this moment with meaning and therefore hope. After a song, we will be invited to practice this ritual of communion with bread and wine or whatever it is that you happen to have on hand. So you can go ahead and get that ready. Even in your darkest hour, my friends, the world is about to turn.
My soul cries out with a joyful shout that the God of my heart is great. And my spirit sings of the wondrous things that you bring to the ones who wait. You fixed your sight on the servant's plight, and my weakness you did not spurn. So from east to west shall my name be blessed, could the world be about to turn. Though I am small, my God, my all, you work great things in me. And your mercy will last from the depths of the past to the end of the age to be. Your very name puts the proud to shame, but to those who would for you yearn, you will show your might, put the strong to flight, for the world is about to turn. My heart shall sing of the day you bring, let the fires of your justice burn. Wipe away all tears, for the dawn draws near, and the world is about to turn. From the halls of power to the fortress tower, not a stone will be left on stone. Let the king beware, for your justice tears every tyrant from his throne. The hungry poor shall weep no more for the food they can never earn. There are tables spread, every mouth be fed, for the world is about to turn. My heart shall sing of the day you bring, let the fires of your justice burn. Wipe away all tears, for the dawn draws near, and the world is about to turn. Though the nations rage from age to age, we remember who holds us fast. God's mercy must deliver us from the conqueror's crushing grasp. This saving word that our forebears heard is the promise which holds us bound, till the spear and rod can be crushed by God, who is turning the world around. My heart shall sing of the day you bring, let the fires of your justice burn. Wipe away all tears, for the dawn draws near, and the world is about to turn. My heart shall sing of the day you bring, let the fires of your justice burn. Wipe away all tears, for the dawn draws near, and the world is about to turn.